Hi, my name's Matt and I'd like to welcome you to this Zinniac video. This is our ITIL Strategist Direct Plan and Improve course, and in this video we will be looking at success factors and key performance indicators. And you can see there on the slide the definition of a success factor, which is a success factor describes a condition or characteristic that must be achieved for something to be considered successful. And the example there is a practice success factor, and obviously as we've gone through, if you've done the other ITIL specialist courses, we've covered the practices, and each practice has its own practice success factors. It's important that success factors are measurable. Key performance indicators are metrics that are used to indicate the fulfillment of a success factor. So they must be linked to a success factor. So we typically define the success factor first, then define the key performance indicators. For a metric to be used as a key performance indicator, an organization should define a target and a weighting for it to reflect its objectives and context. So there we've got the example in table 4.5. Part of it, I've just put one example on there for you. Practice success factor, minimizing negative impact of changes. So you can see that's unspecific, minimizing. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean no impact or 10% impact? Or so we need a metric. Number and duration of change-related incidents, and business impact of change-related incidents, which could be measured in time, perhaps often money. I've said before, when we look for a common metric, a common measure, then we often go for percentage or money, so that one might be money. And then impact of changes identified as sources of problems stroke errors, and that might be time lost or again money. We might go back to put some sort of cost on it. And again, obviously, if it's time, you can relate that to money as well. So if it's half a man day, then it relates to whatever, £500 or whatever our figure is. Leveraging SMART. So I'm sure you've come across SMART, but it's on the slide if you haven't. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And what that's doing is it's just a checklist. Axelos loves a good checklist, and this is a checklist that says when we're defining KPIs, make sure they are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So the example I like to use of one that isn't, and this again, this might be something that comes up in the exam. If it comes up in the exam, very likely if they have a KPI that's not SMART, it will be missing the time bound. And the reason for that is because it's unequivocal. So for instance, make America great again is not SMART according to this definition, because clearly it is not time bound. There is no time limit on that statement. So if someone said make America great again by the end of my term in office, or by the end of my second term in office if I get 2 terms, that will become time bound. And then you could argue about whether it's specific, measurable, achievable, or relevant. I guess you would say it's relevant to people living in the US. You would hope it achievable, but is it measurable? Is it specific? It's probably not specific either, but that's a bit, it's debatable, but it's definitely not time bound. There is just no way you can say it's time bound. So when they come up in the exam, whatever example they give, if it's not, it's very often not time bound. It's got to have, by the end of the week, by the end of the month, by the end of the processing period, but it's got to have some, there's different ways of expressing time, but it's got to have an end point specified. Often success factors are aspirational, and we saw in our example on the previous slide, minimize is obviously, you can always minimize it until you get down to 0. You can always minimize, so that's aspirational. or maximize anything like that. Maximize sales, minimize costs. They're very aspirational. That would always be relevant. KPIs are used to measure progress towards that desired state. The aim is for them to trend in the right direction. And trends are really good, but do remember that the rate of change will change. So you won't just get a straight line and you'll follow that straight line forever. You'll have periods where you'll flatten out and then you'll have a big improvement. So whether you're trying to get your line to go up and it goes up in wavy, or you're trying to get your line to go down and it goes down wavy. And certainly if you've ever done that from a personal point of view, particularly in things like sport, if you're trying to reduce your 5K time, you'll find it goes down and then it flattens off, and then it goes down and it flattens off and it goes down. Or if you're trying to increase your muscle or something, something you want to go up, again it goes up and then it flattens off, and then it goes up and then it flattens off. So it's not looking at the trend, but the trend line will move as well. And think about over what period of time, when you're comparing how you're doing now, are you looking back over what period of time, and are you looking back over a particularly good period of time? That can affect you as well. If you've had a period where you've done really, really well, and then you compare just against that period, you can think, oh, we're not doing so good now. Whereas if you compare against a longer period, then you might look as though you're doing better. So maybe even if you're comparing against periods, think about doing different lengths to go back in time. Other KPIs might be binary in nature, achieved or not, and determine which approach is appropriate on each occasion. So again, that goes back to adapt and adopt and making conscious decisions. And the final slide on KPIs influence on behaviour. And I did mention in an earlier video that we would come back to this. We did mention it before. Undesirable behaviours can result from measuring the wrong thing. And again, I've gave you some examples before. So the classic examples around the service desk. If we just measure, say, time to answer the phone, then people answer the phone. Oh, hello, you're through to the service desk. Can I put you on hold? Hello, you're through to the service desk. Can I put you on hold? Hello, can I... So you're answering the phone really quickly, but you're not giving good service because you're just putting everyone on hold. Or I've got to close the call down quickly. Right, but I'll close it down. But you haven't actually fixed it, or you have to call them back and it becomes less efficient. So be careful about what you measure, that you're measuring the right thing. And consider the behaviours that might be encouraged or not. And it doesn't mention it on this slide, but go to the Gemba from Lean. So Gemba, Gemba, that's where the action happens. And certainly for the service desk, that is one place where you need to go to the Gemba. So yes, measurements, metrics, reports, all good. Obviously, that's what we're talking about. But if you're in any doubt, whether you're in any doubt or not, to avoid any doubt, go to the Gemba, go to the service desk, sit, watch, listen, put the headphones on, listen to conversations, see what people are doing, see if they're actually behaving as you want them to behave. Sometimes the data gives you that information, often it doesn't. Select KPIs that will have the desired effect on service value. Obviously, you're going to try and do that, but check that they are. So don't just assume that they are, check that they are. And what we want to avoid is that watermelon effect. And the watermelon effect, watermelon's green on the outside, red on the inside. So the idea is the KPI is green. So the KPIs we've selected, we're answering the call quickly, we're closing the call quickly, so they're green, but the customer's not satisfied because when we answer the call quickly, we just put them on hold, and when we close the call, we haven't actually solved their issue. So we've picked the wrong KPIs. The KPIs are green, but the customer is dissatisfied. That's red. And again, in that situation, if we're seeing monthly reports or weekly reports, however often, or even real-time reports that say everything's good, but the customers aren't satisfied, we may not be able to see the problem, and if we can't see the problem, we can't fix it, as we've said before. So if that does occur, it's important to examine and define KPIs that review whether they are driving the right behaviours. Time-based KPIs often lead to the watermelon effect. So those two time-based KPIs that I gave you the example of, time to answer the call, time to close the call, both time-based, often lead to the watermelon effect. So be very careful about using those. And the example I gave before about the doctors about getting an appointment within a day, again led to a watermelon effect. So do be careful about that. Okay, that brings us to the end of this video and the end of the section on continual improvement. I hope you've enjoyed it, and you'll join me again in the next video. Until you see me again, have a great day.